Welcome to the Hud Grad Club. I'm Chris Webb, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Career Consultant with the University of Huddersfield's Careers Employability Service. And, full disclosure, I'm also a University of Huddersfield graduate. So I've generally got pretty positive things to say about both the institution and any of our graduates. But don't take my word for it. In this podcast, we'll be meeting different members of the University of Huddersfield's global alumni community, finding out what makes them tick, about their experiences during their time at the university and their career journeys since completing their studies. Join us as we explore the inspiring, innovative and diverse range of individuals that make up the Hud Grad Club. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Hud Grad Club. And Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, for any of our kind of viewers who've maybe not come across you before, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your background and what you did at the university?
Yeah. So my name is Richard Hartley-Parkinson and I left Huddersfield in 2004. I studied media and print journalism there, and then since then I've gone on to form a career in journalism, and I'm now executive editor of Metro.
Fantastic. I'm sure many people will be familiar, or like me, have kind of regularly picked up a Metro on their travels. So that's great to hear. And as always with the podcast, we start each episode with our greatest Hud story ever told. So this is kind of a reflection on your time at the university or any kind of key things that may have happened to you that you think might be worth sharing with our audience. And I believe you have a particularly kind of notable story that got quite a lot of airtime actually from the university already.
Yes, indeed. So I ended up at Huddersfield because it was a relatively local one to where I'm from. It didn't want to be too far away from home, but as I've grown up, I've moved further and further away. I had a great time at university, and I've forgotten what a great time I had at university, particularly in that first year, until there was a social media campaign to find out who had written a mystery note, and I was the author of the note, and I know that the Alumni Society were approached by Storrs Hall after they'd done a big refurb because someone had found this note. I don't know where it was, but down the back of something. So sadly, it didn't get read by the person that followed me in my room at Storrs Hall, but it did end up back in my hands briefly before I went into the archive. And they tracked it down with quite a wide-ranging social media effort, and apparently several people had suggested that it might be me, but it took me a while to see the tags. I saw them on LinkedIn, saw the note, recognised the handwriting. I thought, oh God, what have I done now? And then it kind of started to flood back. I still can't remember where I'd left the note. I thought maybe inside one of the Bibles or something, but no, it was found, and it was really nice to get back in touch with the university. And it's a privilege to know that part of my story is now part of the archives at the university.
And what was the content of this mysterious note that you'd sort of left for future kind of occupants of that room?
Well, it was advice on surviving the first year, basically, and we're talking kind of about how to have fun. There was a guide on the best nights at each nightclub that was doing the pound parties or whatever it was back then, and the best places to go on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It was all that. I mean, there was some information in there that when it was uploaded onto the internet, they decided to black out because they thought that perhaps first year students shouldn't be focusing too much on having fun.
Okay, well, it's in, as you say, it's in the archive now, so I guess people can kind of find it out if they want to. What we will share is we'll also kind of share the URL on the podcast when we send out the edited version. If people want to kind of check it out for themselves, you can find the original story from the Huddersfield alumni team on the website. So we'll share that too. And I guess it kind of leads quite nicely into us talking a little bit more about your career journey, and writing obviously being such an important part of what you did once you were at university, but also obviously what you've done in your career to date as well. So tell us a little bit more about what was that kind of journey like, sort of doing the course at university and then kind of transitioning into the work that you've been doing since then.
Yeah. So when I first started at Huddersfield, I was initially on the radio course. So I was going to radio production. It was one of the tutors there who I'll mention a little later on, but she told me that I had a very good writing style and I should perhaps go into that rather than radio. I don't even have a face for radio, you know, I don't even have a voice for radio. So yeah, so she suggested that I start taking up some shifts at the Tottenham News. So every Friday I would get in my little car, go over the fells to Tottenham, and it all started there really. Once a week, just doing all that as all work experience. I wasn't paid for it, and then yeah, I just got a thirst for it. Really enjoyed seeing my work in writing being published. And yeah, so I continued with that, looked into it a bit further, and then after leaving Huddersfield, I went to Liverpool Community College where I gained my NCTJ qualification, which is a journalism-specific qualification with all the legal aspects and shorthand, which we still use. Yeah, so I went there, and then beyond that, I went to work on a radio station. So I kind of jumped back a bit, confirmed that I don't like radio, didn't like working radio, and then got a job on a local newspaper in Buckinghamshire, that's the Box Herald. And then from there, I started in shifts at a news agency that kind of was commissioned by the Nationals. And from there, I got a job working for Mail Online, initially just uploading stories from the paper onto the website, but then took on more and more responsibility. And made it up to assistant news editor there before going on to the Mirror, where I was news editor. And then I was called back by the same company that owns the Daily Mail and Metro, and that was I think 2014, as as head of news, and then my career has just kind of progressed through there to the programme now, executive editor.
Wow, I mean, as you've said, there are a lot of moves. I mean, is that sort of quite typical sort of within the field of journalism to be able to kind of, I guess, move across to different publications, get experience in those different areas? Is it kind of quite a well-trodden path to make those sort of number of moves?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially you know, the reporters that we take on, they're usually from the local background, because it gives you a really good grounding, because you are living and breathing the paper that you're working on, the community that you're working for, and you see people. You know, when you get someone's name wrong, you can't just ignore them, because you'll see them again and again and again and again. So you know, that's one of the things in journalism, that you know, getting people's names spelled correctly is extremely important. Because there's nothing more offensive. There was an occasion when I was reading Harry Potter whilst working on a local paper, and I quoted someone called Hermione, and I gave her the name Hermione Granger, and she collared me in the street and said, "I know a lot of people around here think I'm a witch, but please don't refer to me as one in print." So yeah, for journalists, that's definitely a great career progression to start on locals. It gives you a very good grounding. It helps speed up your shorthand, and helps you understand the processes of you know, of councils and committees and local government. And then yeah, once I got onto the Nationals, it's quite a steady rise up, and each position that I took was the next chronological step to where I am. And I think this is probably the same in a lot of industries as well. Sometimes if you want to get somewhere in a company, you've got to leave. So you build up some skills and learn how other processes work in different places, and take the best of them and apply them to your next job, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to kind of come back to some of your sort of underrated careers advice a little bit later in the podcast. So a really, really good starting point there. I mean, you mentioned also there, I guess, around, you know, starting off sort of with that view towards radio, kind of going back into it to sort of get a bit of an idea of, you know, was it going to be the right thing? And actually, no, pretty much confirming how you felt about it. Have there been sort of other kind of significant, I guess, light bulb moments in your career as you've made that journey through sort of finishing the degree to kind of where you are now?
Yeah, so I I mean, the biggest light bulb moment was obviously being told that I had a good writing style and that it would suit newspapers. So that was really, really handy. So at the moment, I'm kind of going through a bit of a light bulb moment again, a new one, because I did a speech in June last year at an LGBT event that we hosted, and it gave me a real kind of kick up the backside, if you will, about how I can now use my position as someone quite influential in my company and in the industry to do more to represent LGBTQ people, people of diversity, and stand up a bit more for the underrepresented. So that's that's something I'm going through at the moment, and I'm a judge on the press awards. So it's all kind of stemmed from that, and I've been invited to give other speeches on diversity and equality. So yeah, that's been quite a shift. I still obviously going to continue doing my job because I want to fund it somehow. But no, it's good to be going through yet another life-changing moment, especially just after turning 40.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I think often, particularly kind of newer graduates, you're not necessarily thinking, where am I going to be in kind of 18, 19 years after finishing my degree or kind of graduating. And I think, as you said, being in the same industry or doing kind of not necessarily a similar job, but working in that field, it's how you keep it, I guess, fresh and motivating. And I guess from what you're saying, it's, making sure it's not just about the day job, but also about the other things that are important, and finding the balance with that, even if it's stuff that's professional or whether it's personal. Finding a way, I guess, to kind of keep those things balanced as you move through your career, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of recognition as well, recognizing that a change is just as good as a rest, and that can actually really help your career. I know it certainly helped mine, and there is also an important. I know that this is largely about careers and all the rest of it, but I think you also have to have a light bulb moment where you've got to realise, when you're a workaholic, that other things outside of work are just as important, and you've got to have that support network, whether it's in partners that you're with, your friends. You have to make time. You have to keep those relationships going as well, and that's been something that's been really important this year with everything that's been going on in my career and in my private life. It's important that you don't forget that work isn't the be all and end all of everything.
And that's very timely. I mean, I know you were kind of talking earlier about saying one of those significant light bulb moments being somebody saying to you, you could have a career in writing. That sometimes it's just that one person that can kind of spark something. Are there any kind of particular sort of key people, I guess, that you'd like to give a shout out to on the podcast, maybe, that have been sort of influential throughout your career so far?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are three people, and I I don't think I would be where I am without these three women. The first one is Anne Robinson. She was the one who quite literally sat me down and forced me to fill out a UCAS application on deadline day. So yeah, she was very well. She was a principal of a college in London, and I'm loosely related to her. But yeah, she sat me down and told me, you've got to do this, you have to do this, it's a waste of a brain if you don't. So that's why, that's how I ended up at university. Then, whilst at university, Eileen Jones, who was one of our tutors, that was the woman who recognised my writing ability and really pushed for me to take up that job on the top of the news. Yeah, and really she was an inspiration for getting me into journalism. I'm still in touch with her now, and I'll let her know that I'm doing this podcast. I'm sure she'll be delighted. And then my current boss, Deborah Arthurs, she's the editor of Metro. We've worked together for longer years, and I think I would put down on a podcast. But yeah, she's been a really good friend. She's allowed me to flourish. We bounce well off each other. We know what each other's thinking, and we make a lot of decisions together. And if we don't have an agreement, we will always come to a compromise, and we'll understand why decisions are made. And I think that's really important. So yeah, I'm glad to say that those three women have been in my life, and they've really helped me along in my career.
Oh, fantastic. Well, yeah, Deborah and Eileen, big shout out to you. And yeah, we will let you know, or I'm sure Richard will let you know that you're going to be getting that shout out when you're watching the podcast. I mean, brilliant reflection so far, Richard. Thanks so much for sharing kind of parts of your career journey. One part, obviously, of the podcast that we always kind of like to conclude with is our underrated careers advice section. And you've kind of referenced a bit of advice, I guess, from your sort of reflections from your career so far. But are there any other kind of particular nuggets, I guess, of wisdom or key insights that you'd like to share from, I guess, what you've learned to date?
Yeah, well, I think I'm probably going to echo the majority of other participants in the podcast, and I'm afraid it is work hard, because it is so important that you work as hard as you can, and that you make sure you get the recognition for the work that you do. Yeah, it can't be said enough times, really. You've got to put in the absolute grunt work. I've had to do the awful shifts that finish at 4 a.m, even 6 a.m. I've had to sit outside in the freezing cold, so cold that the only way to get my car to heat up was to drive round and round and round in circles, and spend lunchtime at the chicken rotisserie in Waitrose. To thaw out of it. Yeah, so working hard. I mean, it is something that's been said over and over. So I've written down a couple of other little nuggets of advice. One of the for journalism specifically, and this again goes to the work hard ethic, is write every story as though it's the front page lead, because then you're treating it with excellence. If you know that it's going to be at page 75 near, then you don't care about it, but write it as though it's the best story that's ever happened. So yeah, so another piece of advice would be with connecting with people. You've got to connect to people, and you have to connect to others, introduce other people to other people. Don't protect them over your contacts, because you're building up a network, and if everybody knows that you can be trusted and you can trust them, then that really does help with your career. It helps with moving to other jobs, and it's also good to have a bit of rivalry. You won't always get on with people, but it is good to have those rivals there, so you've got someone to compare yourself to. You've got a benchmark for what you want to be like, or how you want to be, or how you don't want to be as well. So yeah, connecting people and connecting with people. Always learn and grow, always be ready to take on new challenges, be ready to learn, keep up to date with what's going on in your industry. That's extremely important. If I'd stuck in newspapers, then, well, I mean, the death of newspapers hasn't been as fast as was predicted, 20 years ago, but the newspapers are declining. So online is the future. And I recognised that 12, 13 years ago when I first moved to online journalism. And there was a lot of snobbery around at the time about it, but you just have to, when there's snobbery, you just have to ignore it, just do your job, get on with it, and recognise what the potential is. And, we all know how big online news is now, and it is taking over newspapers for sure. Don't take criticism badly. People will have things to say that you don't want to hear, but sometimes you have to hear them. Hopefully it can be told to you in a constructive way, but just learn from what you've been told, build on it, and try to do better next time. People are criticising you only because they want to get better from you, and they know that they can get better from you. Say yes. If you're given an opportunity, say yes. If you, even if it means that you've got to stay out till 10 o'clock on a job or do something you don't necessarily want to do. Because if you show that you're eager, then you'll start getting the nicer jobs and you start getting the better things, the things that you want to do. Again, it does kind of hark back to the work hard and prove yourself. That's where that comes from, really. And then at the same time, take risks and make mistakes. It's important that you don't always listen to your inner dialogue, because your inner dialogue, it's not who you are, it's a reflection of what you think someone from the outside is going to be saying to you. So if you imagine that your inner dialogue is actually another person sat on the other side of the room saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, let it motivate you to actually do better.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Richard. Some excellent nuggets there. And I mean, a lot of kind of commonality, I think, with some of the sort of advice we've had from previous guests as well, particularly interesting about the kind of the connecting, with people. And we've had quite a lot of entrepreneurs who've been on the podcast saying that as well, that this idea that actually it's about having that large ecosystem of contacts, which could include kind of rivals. You're learning from people who might be doing the same things as you, that could be in competition with you, but actually fundamentally, you want to have those people in your network and not outside of it, so it's really interesting to hear that. And I think, again, as you mentioned there about that idea of sort of criticism and compromise, they don't have to be negative things, they are things that will exist in work, whether you like it or not. And, therefore very important things to kind of wrap your head around and almost embrace, when it comes to kind of working with other people. So, fantastic insights. And thanks so much for, sharing your experience on the podcast.
So, thank you very much again.
So, I mean, if we've had any students, current graduates, staff from the university, any other interested parties kind of watching today who might want to kind of reach out and get in touch with you after watching this, what's the best sort of place to find you?
Well, quite easy to find. You search for my name, there's plenty of information out there about me, but to contact me directly, it would be LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm usually quite good at responding on both of those. That's
great. Well, what we'll do is we'll pop those links kind of at the bottom of the screen for everyone who's kind of watching the podcast now. So, please do kind of check those out and do get in touch with Richard if you've kind of found the content interesting today. So, Richard, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for becoming another member of the Hud Grad Club. And obviously, we wish you well with all of the future endeavours at Metro and beyond.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. Take care. All the best. Enjoyed the podcast? Then go to the University of Huddersfield YouTube channel for all of our future episodes. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to hit the bell button for notifications. If you'd like to be involved in the Hud Grad Club podcast moving forward, please get in touch with us on alumni@hud.ac.uk.